I'm Grizzly with Bigfoot Outlaw.
Hi, I'm Mary. I'm part of the Bigfoot Outlaw gang.
It was a spring turkey hunt, and I was hunting in Kentucky, not too far from the Ohio River. And I was on a farm where I was hunting, and it was 3 valleys that came down into a ravine in a creek. And I heard this Jake gobbling, and it sounded like a pretty good sized turkey. So, being a turkey hunter, you crawl on your belly to try to get to it and stalk it. And 75, 90 yards out is probably the closest I got to it. And you know, we had a 3.5 inch 12. So I thought it's not gonna come in any closer. I was like, well, I'm gonna take a shot at it. I probably got a pretty good chance. When I took a shot at it, you know, of course, feathers went everywhere. But about that time, something started like running up a hill, and it was like tearing branches and everything. And I thought it was another hunter. And I thought, well, I didn't see the hunter down there, because it looked like the best way to describe it was somebody that was oversized in a ghillie suit. But its didn't, proportions weren't just right. And the human brain will protect yourself from trauma, right? If something you don't recognize. And I just thought it was another person. But the way it cleared the hill going up, I mean, it was pretty steep, and it cleared it in seconds. In the distance that it went up the hill in a short amount of time, it was just, I don't know, it just happened so fast, right? And you're trying to process that at the moment. So I got discouraged, and I thought, well, there's another hunter back here, so I might as well call it quits for the day. So I went back up to the farm, and I said, Jim, I was like, he's like, what's wrong, Grizzly? And I was like, somebody's back there hunting on your property. And he turned and looked at me, and he said, what did you see? And I was like, another hunter. I said, I took a shot at a turkey. Says too far off, but I said I didn't see him down there in the vicinity. And he looked at me, he said, where were you hunting? And I told him in the far back where everything comes down to the creek and the ravine. And he just smiled at me, and he was like, that's not a hunter. And he just let it go. And I was just like, oh, okay, whatever. Because I really wasn't too far into Bigfoot or anything out in the woods at that time. Of course, you have all the TV shows coming out, so you know, in the community, it sparked a lot of interest. So you just didn't put 2 and 2 together until later on. And when your mind replays that scenario over and over, you try to debunk, what was that? Was that a person? You know, the body proportion size, the neck and everything, it just didn't play out when you go back and replay it over in your head. And then when you start seeing the shows on TV or other people in the community, and hearing other hunters and so forth talk about their encounters, it's like, wow, there is something out here, right? And that's what sparked everything. It's like, well, what is out here? We know things exist that shouldn't exist, right? But there's more out here in the woods that people lead on to. They just don't come out. So that's how I got started. Well, so we discuss that with other turkey hunters, right? And we hear this a lot now with turkey hunters, is they'll be doing turkey calls, right? And they will call in a creature, or Bigfoot or Sasquatch, whatever you want to call it, and they're both freaked out because they're thinking they're stalking a turkey, and it's actually human with the call. Because you got to stop and think. A lot of turkey hunters, they go out full camo, ghillie suits, leaves on their clothes and hats to make you blend in. And I guess that is a possibility. I mean, I won't know for sure, because I didn't hear it or see it until I took that shot. And when that shot in that valley, when it echoed, I mean, you know, 3.5 inch, it's a good sized shotgun shell. And it gave a pretty good wallop. And when that turkey, feathers went everywhere, and that's when it started taking off. And I really thought, you know, at the time, it's, oh, damn, a hunter. Because, you know, we don't wear orange out turkey hunting. So, but to this day, I guess we'll never know, right? It's interesting. Like I say, you just replay it over and over. And what if, what could it be? It's, you know, we see that when we interview people a lot too. It's trying to process that. What was it? You know, what did happen? You know, because we never want to try to jump to conclusions right away. And especially back then, Bigfoot wasn't on my mind. I was trying to get that, you know, 28-pound Jake that was gobbling at me, right? The best way I can describe that, it was the size of it and the way it moved up the hill. It was unrealistic. It didn't seem human. I think that's what threw me off the most, was it happened so fast and the amount of distance it enclosed going up that hill was so short. It was like, yeah, I can't even run that fast. And I was young and prime then. But it just makes you wonder, right? Because we hear these encounters with hunters and we interview people, but what really made me think it was a human at first is, the best way to describe it is the swamp thing. Remember in the old movie, The Swamp Thing, the monster? That's what it looked like. It was like covered in moss or something. And that's why I thought it was possibly somebody in a ghillie suit. It wasn't just you see fur or hair. It was a mixture, but it was more like it rode in a leaf pile with mud on it. It's the best way to describe it. Like camo itself. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if they do that or not. But it was just interesting because when you see what I saw compared to other hunters and other people we interview, it's similar, but it depends on where in the country you see something like that, whether they're covered in leaves or sticks or mud or debris or anything. It's just strange to hear that. Nothing at all, no signs. Only, like I said, I was focused on that Jake, and it was gobbling, and I think the way I was crawling around that side of that hill over those logs, I don't think it was focused, whatever it was focused on me. I think it was more focused, like you said, probably on the bird, the turkey. But you know, just looking at you now, I mean, I can still hear that shot ringing out and seeing that turkey's feathers. And then instantly it was to my left. It was just like it scrambled and started taking off. Yeah. And the first thing you think is, oh damn, you know, is that another hunter? Especially in the area, because you know, I'm supposed to be on private property and a lot of acres, so. The best way to describe it, it's like a elephant or a big bull running up a hill. Because usually if you're out in the woods a lot and you do come across other hunters, you can hear them coming in, breaking twigs, stepping on branches or leaves on the ground. But this was just so loud and massive. In putting that together with, you know, I almost shot probably another human being. It was kind of freaky because, like I said, it just happened so fast. In your mind is trying to process, you know, did you almost shoot somebody? You know, what was it? You know, how did it climb up the hill, run up the hill that fast? And like I said, it's just the size was not proportionate, right? Well, it's funny because I grew up in the country, right? And we had a lot of acres behind the house. And it's interesting because you see these structures that people call them in the woods, whether they're teepees or X's or just stick formations, you know, around a tree or base of a tree. You know, we always play war when we were growing up, right? And we were always out in the woods. We just thought it was other kids. But as you watch stuff on TV and you talk to other people that experience things and you see their videos and their pictures, and you're like, wow, is that a possibility, you know? 'Cause it's not like we see these creatures or beings, whatever you want to call them, put them together or make them. So we're just still trying to speculate it, right, with the evidence we find in the area. What made it? Why was it made? What's the purpose, right? You always try to analyze and trying to think of possibilities, right? You don't always want to jump to one end of the spectrum and call it something it's not. But we also want to look at what is other trace evidence in the area that can corroborate, you know, is this possibly a Sasquatch structure or something like that. Not only tracks, broken tree branches and other stuff, but any trace evidence that you have in the area. Because that's when you get the totality, right, of everything. And that way when you present the evidence, you say, hey, this is a possibility. It's not every tree break we see out in the woods is possibly Sasquatch or Bigfoot. You know, if that was the case, we'll all be millionaires. We'll all have a bunch of videos and pictures. But it's very fascinating and interesting subject. It's never a dull moment, that's for sure. Well, I got this bright idea one year, and I've got over 60 trail cams. And I went out and contacted the manufacturers, and I wanted to test a theory about game trail cameras and they're related to Bigfoot or Sasquatch. You know, can they see or can they not see? That's always been the question, is what is on their spectrum of eyesight, right? The visibility range. And so I put it up in these probably about a 20-acre spread. Basically, I want it to where I put these in a specific area, geographic area. And I want it to be like when you went into a store. As soon as you went into the front of that store, I want to be able to track you through every aisle and everything that you touch, right? So I drew a map of the area and I tried to place these cameras strategically in location, so if deer would walk in one location of the field, I can watch them through 30 other cameras as they go through the woods and around and exit. So I can track them as they move. Because there's been strange instances where we heard things over the years, we didn't know what it was. Hammering, wood knocks, whatever you want to call it. And we were younger, right? Didn't know, we weren't educated about some of this stuff. So when I put these cameras up, some of them I put 3 or 4 to a tree. And that way I can get a full 360, right? Because I've noticed on other people's trail cameras and images that something will walk up to the side of it and check it out, but we never got a good picture of what walked up to the tree. So I planned this out, and for 6 months I was just like dying to check the cameras, but I didn't. And when I got the cameras back, each SD card was labeled where it was at, what tree, and I had GPS coordinates for all the cameras. And I was perplexed when I was going through it. It was the lack of data that was not present. And I had a rough time wrapping my mind around that, is because I would watch turkey come in from location A, right? And it should have went to D, F, and G. And it didn't record, and it only recorded on certain angles of the tree. And it took me almost a couple of months to try to decipher what I was looking at, because some trail cameras put out certain frequencies, EMF, certain put out IR, infrared, right, to snap the pictures, determine motion. And you can see some of the cameras where deer would walk up and look at the camera and smell it and walk away. You would see birds and squirrels, raccoons. I mean, any creature that's in the woods would capture it. But we noticed in certain areas of the field or the woods, there was a lack of animal presence, a lack of birds, a lack of deer and other stuff. And so the more I looked into it, it was like, I know this is going to sound far-fetched because we had a rough time trying to work through it on the show, is that certain cameras would record on one side of the tree, but on the next location, it would be turned off and the other side would be recording. And it was weird, it didn't make sense, right? Like if you got cameras at 12, 3, 6, and 9, right, on a clock, you should be able to get a full 360. So whatever is activating the cameras, you should be able to track it and trace it through the woods or the area. And then it happened. We caught something on one of the trail cameras. I didn't know what it was. And I was like, well, this is weird, because the cameras were anywhere between 6.5 to 8 feet off the ground. And we caught this image and we showed it for like almost a month on our channel. It looked like, the best way that other people describe it, not from my own words, it looks like a chest, it looks like a pectoral muscle, and the shoulder as it walked up to one of these cameras on the side of the tree. And it activated it 2 or 3 different times, and it looks like it's walking around the tree trying to figure out what it is. We don't know what it is. People have said it's a possum hanging off a tree, which, okay, to a white Bigfoot, to what else, we don't know. But then it was the next night, around the same time frame, we caught something else. We don't know what it is, but it's short hair. And we didn't say anything what we thought it was. We just put it out and like, hey, what do y'all think about this? And people were screaming, dog man, that's dog man hair, and all their stuff. Now, the one picture that looks short hair looks totally different creature from the first picture. But we don't know what it is. And I showed Mary the footage, and very interesting, very interesting. But it was the lack of data in how things seemed like, I know it sounds crazy, turned on or off. It's like something was walking through, it didn't want to be captured. There were some where it showed the trail cameras were being drained, loss of battery power. You know, it shows the indicator on the footage. But then an hour later, it's fully charged. It's like something was draining the energy, or the batteries were, you know, going bad or something, getting weak, and it just like recharged itself. A lot of things that we did catch we can't explain, like flashes of light in the woods, because I would also have some of these cameras to where if a camera 30 yards to my left would activate, the camera on the far right or the far left would catch it as well. So we had different angles. Very fascinating. You know, you hear a lot of stories about people, you know, don't use trail cams, it scares them because they can see. There may be some validity to it, but I just wanted to see for myself the different makes and models and what's the difference. And evidently there are differences in the trail cameras. I was really surprised on the action of the animals. So that is a theory, right? A lot of people talk about that. We actually experienced that with one of my old police cameras I used to use on the force, and I was taking photographs out in the woods, and it was right before one of my shows, and I was trying to get the SD card out, and it was like nothing on there. I was like, oh my God, what happened? And then my camera wouldn't work. And I'm like, well, that doesn't make sense. I had this camera for years, right? And I used to take, you know, photographic evidence with it, and it's like, this isn't, I don't know what's going on. So when we use the trail cameras, I've got a GPS that you can make calls on and see everything. So one of those high-end Garmin's that you use out in the wilderness, like in Montana and stuff. And when I was out there hanging the trail cams, it would malfunction and not work. And when I took Mary out there with her kids, we went to take a picture of a mushroom in the same area. And my phone just started acting crazy, glitching, doing different colors. Looked like you shattered the screen, I guess the best way to describe it. And she was smelling something just right before that, and I was like, no, we just need to get the kids and go. That's probably a good sign for us to leave the area. So I've got, I don't know how many Bigfoot expeditions, campouts, events, I just lost count of it, right? And it got to the part where people were inviting me into certain parts of the country because they had so much activity of Bigfoot or Sasquatch. And I'm like, there's no way you got that kind of activity in a weekend. I mean, it's just, you know, we hear it all the time. It's either a hit or miss, or you don't get nothing at all, or it's, you know, full-fledged, you know, activity just in that short burst. So I traveled to this part of the state, of this country, and part of the country, and it was 12:30 in the afternoon. They were showing how to do footprints and tracks and cast them, and really good class. And all of a sudden, the Ohio hell just starts screaming in the background. And this is like 12:30, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and we got like 50 people at this camp out. And I paused, and I'm like, nobody's listening to this. And everybody's like, Grizzly, hear something. And everybody got real quiet. And I counted to 14. You know, 1,000, 2, 1,000, and finally I quit counting. That's how long it lasted. And we're like, yeah, that wasn't a human. There's, you know, the way that it went, the pitch, and the distance. You know, it's so monstrous, I guess you could say, because it wasn't close, but it was so far away. It was projecting that loud. And of course, you've heard it before. It's just a phenomenon to hear something like that. Everybody knows my background in law enforcement, right? And I say I'm a pretty good interviewer, probably not the best, but I'm pretty good. And at first I thought everybody was punking us out or punking me out. Because here I got all these cameras, all this equipment. It's like, okay, this is where everybody's gonna make their name for themselves or look at me. And it was just like the screams, the hollers, the tree breaks, the tree bends. And then we went to different parts of this park, and it was just like, we're getting tracks and prints and all this other stuff, and it's just like, this is just off the chart. And we start documenting, and then people were coming down and meeting with me. They're like, yeah, I lived here all my life. Bigfoot's here. We all know it. You know, at the resort, they sell Bigfoot paraphernalia, merchandise. And it's like, wow, I did not know that it was that kind of activity in this area. But the locals were like, yeah, it's no big deal. We know it's here. We've seen them in the woods. You know, it takes our chickens from time to time. And it's like, wow. And this thing is not supposed to exist, right? And it does, because we see physical and trace evidence of it. So I don't know, it's very fascinating. A couple of years ago, it was weird because, you know, like I said, I grew out in the country, and we went up to town, and it was strange because something told me when we were going through the S-curves to look to my right. And when I looked to the right, it was a corner of a field and a tree line. And I looked, and I was like, well, there's 3 people sitting there. It looked like the damn 3 Stooges. And as I was thinking, I was like, well, that doesn't seem right. I'm like, it's not hunting season. And the way they were sitting, the weeds were probably up to my chest. So when I got back to the house, I got back in my car and drove down there. I was like, I gotta check this out. It's just eating me alive. And I parked, and there was no place to park but on the road because it's a country road. So I got my 4-ways on, and I'm walking out to this field where I saw this, whatever it was. The weeds were up to here. And I'm thinking, okay. And when I walked over there, the grass was matted down and everything to where something was sitting there. And next thing I know, everybody was honking the horn because they couldn't get around the S-curves where I was parked. So I'm trying to, and I didn't have my phone on me to take pictures, so I'm running back to the car. And I went back and I measured, and it was like 59.5 inches was how tall the weeds were, where it was matted down around the area, standing around the outside. So it was very interesting because you smelled something, but you didn't. It was like, do you smell something or you don't smell something? You know how it comes and goes? Because you're trying to gather what you just saw and try to process it. But it's funny because ever since then, I always call them the 3 Stooges. And my mom, she's funny as hell. She kept complaining to us she don't know what's eating the stuff she's putting out in the woods. And she used to go out with me, put trail cameras up, and she thought I was always out there deer hunting or tracking deer until we come across the print way out in the woods, and it was in October, November. And she looked down, she's like, Grizzly? She's like, why is somebody out here with no socks or shoes on? And I looked at my mom, and I was just like, I have no clue. And still to this day, they have no idea. She thinks it's raccoons and stuff. It's funny as get out, it really is. So, but it's just, I don't know. And then her holler monkey. Yeah, that's something else.
So growing up, I had grown up in an area that was right down the street from a psychic camp. And so there's a lot of spiritual activity around there and a lot of orbs and stuff. So one time when I was 10 years old, I was with our youth leader at the church, and we were doing like some recordings for VBS for the Bible lessons. So we were down by the river and doing all this. And we were on one side of the river, and on the other side, as we were sitting there, all of a sudden we started hearing all this screeching and this howling sound. And it sounded like this deep, almost like a howler monkey type of growling. And on the other side we could see, and all of a sudden all the branches were breaking. It was just like here and then here, and like between each spot it was probably like 10 to 15 feet, and it was just like going super fast, and we could watch it all the way down the other side. And so we didn't know what it was, and of course, you know, me being a kid at the time, our youth leader was like, well, it's probably some sort of monkey or something. So I didn't know that it was Bigfoot at the time until becoming an adult and actually dating Chris after some of these experiences and going back on it. But at the time, it was really weird. All of the sounds like stopped. There was like no nature sounds, and then all of a sudden we just started hearing all this, that screeching, and then branches breaking, and it just this like running and thumping. So it was all the way down. We just watched it, and then it just disappeared. So we watched it all the way down, and it was pretty cool. Of course, we were across the river. We didn't smell anything or anything like that, but it was pretty neat. The next experience that we had, this was about 3.5 years ago. I was down in the same area. It was about a mile upward from where the area is that I had experienced. And so I had went down there, was doing some meditative prayers, and had been sitting down there. And it's a very secluded area where not a lot of people go. And so as I was sitting down there praying, I noticed again all of the sounds stopped, and it got like eerily quiet. And then I had this weird feeling, so I was like, okay, I better get up and get going. So as I start to get up and walk up the path, I heard these two voices. And so the first one was kind of up the path this way, and I heard it go shh. And then another one that was like right beside me said, look, she's over there. And I noticed it wasn't like my physical ears that were hearing it. It was more like internal. It sounded like ESP, or at the time I didn't know what it was, but more of like a spiritual communication. So I stopped instantly and I start looking around, and of course I'm looking for humans. There's nobody there. And as I look over to my right, it's probably about 10 feet from me, there's these two trees. They're probably about 4 feet in distance from them. As I'm looking in between these two trees, there's this, I can see the outline, and it looks, very tall, almost ape-like, human-like. I would say it was between about 6 to 7 feet tall, and it was very translucent. It reminded me of that movie Predator, and I could just see the outline of it, and I could almost see through it, and it was kind of like glimmery. And I'm sitting there looking, I'm like, what am I seeing? And then all of a sudden it took its hands and it started violently shaking these trees. And so one of the trees was probably about that big around, maybe about 6 inch, and then the other one was probably about a 10 inch. And it had those, and it shook it, and these trees just shook all the way up. And I was just sitting there like, oh wow, what am I looking at? And then instantly I was like, okay, I better get out of here. And I turned my head and just started going up the path. And I heard some more branches breaking when I was walking up the path, but after that I didn't hear anything. And so I, at the time, had no clue what I had seen. I didn't know if it was just some sort of spiritual being or what I was, or an alien or anything like that. But of course, when Chris and I started dating, and I was listening to all the different Bigfoot experiences, we had determined that that was definitely a Bigfoot experience. So then I ended up getting him, and I took him down to that exact area. And this was in May of this year.
Right.
And so I took him down there a couple days after it had rained really hard. And I was like, I really want you to see this area because there's a lot of activity down here. So as we're going down there, we're walking up the trails to get there, we actually found tracks.
What was interesting is as we was walking down this path for like ATVs where they maintain the creek or the area, I noticed when I got looking, it was like somebody was walking, but the strides were so huge in between, like 4.5 feet approximately between each step. And what really was weird is that the steps were in front of each other, not side by side. And when you look at that, and then when we went down, Mary's like, what are you looking at? And I'm like, I don't know what I'm looking at. I mean, it looks like toes. I was like, look at that one up there. And she's like, are you serious? And I'm like, well, unless somebody's walking around here barefoot and they can hop and skip that far, I mean, what else could it be? And then I didn't realize we were in that same area where she had whatever encounter she had, because I wanted to see the area and see if the surroundings were any familiar locations or some similarities with the woods and the creek compared to other encounters that we hear and interview people. And it was walking right towards that area, and you can see where it steps off. And she tried to recreate it, and she couldn't even come close. And I'm not going to even try it. She's got longer legs than I do, right? So, but we hear this a lot with people, is that they're out in the woods. They don't know what they see or what they hear or what they're experiencing because they have nothing to compare it to. And it was funny because the more and more I was educating her about this phenomenon and other cryptids, and she was hearing other people's encounters, she was like, I think that happened to me. And I was like, well, tell me, what did happen. And we try to get those fine details because it's like pieces of a puzzle, right? What you tell me, I'm going to keep with a grain of salt, and maybe it's similar to another encounter on the West Coast compared to the East Coast or down south. And the more she talked, and she said it sounded like a holler monkey. When I was going through the trees, I just start laughing because she had to play me what a howler monkey sounds like. And it does sound similar to what we hear out in the woods. And I guess that's the closest thing for a person to recognize that she recognized the holler monkey from when she was younger. I don't know if it was from the zoo or what it was, but it's just fascinating. And trying to understand what people go through, and a lot of people don't even know it, right? Until they hang around other people or watch shows on like your channel or our channel, and they hear other people coming forward, and they're like, what was that maybe? Because when you hear knocks in the forest or the woods, is it rocks? Is it a piece of wood on the side of a tree stump? Are they banging on their chest? We don't know, and we're trying to figure that out. And just like, what was it, last night, we heard that woodpecker. And I think somebody made the reference of a gorilla at the zoo banging on its chest real fast. And yeah, it can have a cadence like that, right? But if you don't know what you're experiencing or what to look for, just like I did when I was younger, I would walk right by and not think nothing of it. Or when we were hunting and Dad was like, son, smell that? That's deer. Bull crap, Dad, that's not deer now. I know what that smell is. Something just left the area, and it wasn't on four legs either, right? So, and then as you get older and you meet other people across the country in other states that have all these encounters and experiences, and you're like, yeah, I used to be that person that drew that line in the sand years ago, and I would never cross that line. But it got to the point to where I kept erasing that line and pushing that line further out. And I guess everybody knows Ron Moorhead, and more I talk to Ron over the years, it's just like, yeah, Grizzly, don't even put the line out anymore. Just leave it. Just don't even draw a line. I was like, yeah, you're right, because, you use his scenario when he was younger. He thought it was an ape running around in the forest, an unknown primate. And now he's like, he's all into quantum physics and quantum mechanics and quantum computing. And when he first came out with his first book, I was like, Ron, I think you're onto something. Because it's interesting to see how you got the cryptid field, you get the UFO field, you got the paranormal field, right? You got the flesh and blood, you got the what people call the woo factor. Well, whatever you want to call it, something that's happening, it is real. We're all experiencing it. First time in Missouri. And it wasn't even, 3 or 4 hours after we were here, you heard the recording, hollering, hooting, and coyotes with them. And it's just like, what are they doing? It's just this, I just don't know. And she's like brand new in it, and she's like a sponge soaking everything up.
So when we first pulled up, we had pulled up and we didn't see Curtis. And so we had heard some noises, and then
it's already dark.
Yep, already dark.
Yeah, sun's already set.
And he was like, we got to look for Curtis. So he takes his car and pulls out and leaves. And I'm sitting there with the kids in the car. And I started to hear something. So I shut my car off, put the windows down, and I start, getting the video out on my phone. Well, I started hearing this growling noise, and then we started hearing like these coon hounds. And I didn't catch it on the video. It wasn't quick enough, but there was like this whooping sound right before it, and then this deep like growling sound, and then it was like coyotes or coon hounds started yelling. And so we had heard that. And then when Chris come driving back, and then Curtis ended up walking up, and we're sitting there, and then we started hearing some back and forth where we would get.
Before Curtis came out of the woods where your tent is, I was over there, and I heard a growl, and I was like, Curtis, stop it. I was like, I got my American Express on me. You don't play any pranks. And then Curtis walks out of the other side of the woods to where the grill and everything's at right now, right? And I'm like, Curtis, that wasn't you? And Curtis like, what are you talking about? I've been down over here.
And that was the area where I was recording them.
Yes.
The growling. It was the exact same spot, so that was really weird.
I really did thought it was Curtis. Because it was just so ironic. I walk up the edge of the woods, it's dark, and I hear a growl. And I was like, shut up, Curtis, stop it. You know, Curtis is a big prankster. But when it comes to this stuff, he's very serious, you know, because you have to be. Because you don't want to take something that's not nothing, right, and try to make it out of something. So, but yeah, when I heard the growl, I was just like, stop it, Curtis. And not even 30, 40 seconds later, he comes walking out behind me out of the woods, you know, happy we're here. And I'm like, well, that was interesting.
Yeah. And then during that night, even after we got quiet and went in the tent, we were hearing all kinds of back and forth, and we heard a lot of whooping sounds. We did hear some branches breaking. Curtis ended up with his recorder out. It was about almost 3 to 4 minutes of them just going and calling back and forth, and it was pretty cool. And then going into Saturday, during the day, we had noticed up on one of the ridge lines with the hills, we had noticed quite a bit of movement. So we started kind of looking up there and recording, and it looked like we had caught like maybe 2 of them. And we thought that maybe they're the ones that have been kind of watching us. And so we got them on camera, and then we didn't hardly hear anything all day. And then it was that evening, Curtis and I, it started getting right where it started to get dark. And so Curtis and Edison and I started to walk up, and we started going down the path. I had this weird feeling to go up that way. And as we're walking, like I have my camera, my phone out. I just have it on like video, just getting ready if I see anything where I can push the button. Well, as we're starting to approach, and you know, we're looking down the path, and you know, there's a few moths here and there. We'll see them, and nothing outrageous or anything. We're just sitting there going, and as we're starting to walk up in this one area, Curtis's flashlight starts blinking. He had just charged it and it was working fine. And then as I'm approaching it, my cell phone starts messing up. And it goes out of video mode and just starts randomly snapping pictures. And I'm like, what the heck? And so I go ahead and flip it back over to video, and I start recording as we're walking up to this spot. And as we're walking up, all of a sudden, like we had kind of seen like some flashing lights, and then Edison was like, Mom, something's over there. I saw something move. So we stop. Curtis has his flashlight, and he's like down like this. And we had seen like some lights and stuff. And so we're going, I start recording, we come over, and we caught the image and seen it where you can't even like see through, but it's kind of like how Chris described it. You could see like the dark image, but it also looks like almost something with like a ghillie suit on, like where there's like
it was absorbing the light. That's what was weird, and we didn't catch it at first. Steve caught it when Curtis took the flashlight and moved it a little bit. It was just like maybe 3 or 4 frames. You can see something standing there watching them.
And it's like not even probably 4 or 5 feet from Curtis while he's doing that. And then there was like a light source up at the top that we couldn't figure out where that came from. We didn't know if it was like an orb or something. But it was real weird because it got quiet, and these moths, it was just like, when I say a plague of moths, just, and I mean, they were everywhere, all these little white moths, and we're just sitting there, and they're just coming at us and coming at us. And we caught that on the video, and then when we started to walk back up, we're going back up, and as we get out of that area, all the moths disappear again. So we're going up, and we see this one other little clearing area, and Curtis walks in there. We're kind of looking to double check to make sure. As he's coming out, my video starts to shut off, and as soon as that does it, his flashlight completely goes kaput and stops working. So we're like, okay, that's weird. And it was right as we were getting all out of that area. So then we walk back to camp. The rest of the night, going into now, today, my phone has been messed up and still having trouble. It doesn't want to charge. It's not working right. And I don't even know did Curtis say if his flashlight ever started working again? Do you guys know?
I don't know, but I'm trying to figure out what that is behind Miguel. I don't know, it looks like it's swaying. And what's weird though is there's no movement over there. It's right there behind those big clumps of trees. And we were just talking about this. Wouldn't that be wild if something does happen?
I was hearing movement. I got my camera and I can't zoom in.
What is that? Now see, now he pointed the camera over there and it's not moving now. And now the wind's picking up and it's not moving. I didn't know if it was like leaves, like moving, but it was weird. It was like moving left and right from a far distance. And I kept
seeing something.
And this is what we talk about. You just never know when something can possibly happen. But you know, I mean, if
I was thinking about that too. I was like, damn it, I didn't bring my camcorder.
People out in the woods hunting, sitting there by a campfire, taking a break, eating a sandwich, drinking a pop, you know, in between walking, and that half, it was just crazy. And I mean, we joke around about this stuff, right? And I always tell Mary, I'm not afraid of no man by any means, but whatever walks out here in the woods and it lives amongst us, yeah, that's kind of creepy. But it was weird, you know, it's right there in that dark area behind Miguel. That's what's really strange. And it was like, I don't know, I know it's gonna sound crazy, but the best way to describe it, it looked like a big basketball moving left and right.
I thought I saw something.
Yeah, it's like, you know how the deers would do that when you go deer hunting? They would stomp and snort and try to move their head around and get you to move. It's, I don't know.
Something creeping up through there when we were talking. I just didn't want to say anything. That's when I thought to myself, man, I didn't bring my camera.
Yeah, that was just really strange. That just caught me off guard.
Hey, they like to hang out in the dark spots.
I know, isn't that strange? We was talking about that last night, how like during our campouts, you hear hunters or other campers, right, or people on Bigfoot expeditions, it's like they know where that light barrier starts and that darkness line begins, and they do not cross that threshold at night to come into lightness, to show themselves. And it just makes you wonder why is that, right? I know they want to be hidden because they're pretty well with that, but
yeah, it makes sense, because if you're a hunter, you kind of want to stay in the shady spots.
Right.
Once you step out in the sun,
right.
if you're moving, you stick out like a sore thumb. I think they're aware of that, especially since their hair has this shine to it.
Well, we were talking about thermals last night. I don't know who it was, about somebody's dog and stuff, and some of the other people that do a lot of filming, we were talking, and I was like, you ever thermal a polar bear? And they're like, no, why? I'm like, it's not going to register because the hair on it, right? And my old saying is, and we always laugh about, what color is a polar bear? What color is it? No, it's black.
Black? Yeah, underneath.
Because the hair is translucent, right? So it picks up the surroundings and makes it look white because the surroundings on it. That's why a lot of bears look that yellowish, brownish color, like tar or something on it, because it's not pure white. It's almost translucent. And when we look at some of the specimens people gather over the years, you know, we talked about the Mandela and the hair and everything, and we look at how it's like a calico cat, some of the colors, mixtures, and then you get those like clear pieces of hair. The best way to describe it to people that's never seen it, it looks like fiber optic. You know, clear pieces of plastic, right, or fiber optic, where it's translucent. And I don't know, some of the theories is that's why it can chameleon itself and take shapes and whatever around the surroundings. So I don't know. There's a lot of theories.
When they walk into the sunlight, they disappear.
Right.
Hair structure.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's very possible. Like when they're in the shade, you see like jet black, and then when
Right.
they walk out into the sun, they kind of disappear.
Right. And it's interesting because, you know, she talks about the predator effect, you know. Now, years ago, when we start hearing those encounters, we were like, man, you're crazy. That stuff doesn't happen. And then in 2015, when Barb Shu caught that one that cloaked, She was out with a group on her property, and she had a walking stick with an iPod duct taped to it. So everywhere she would walk, it would record. And I was showing her that video, and she's like, "What was that?" And you see like this flash, and something jumps out of a tree, takes tree branches down with it. And it looks like Predator out of the movie where it's cloaking, right? And it's just, and I was amazed because now I finally got somebody that has credible evidence that's been captured. They sent it off to Hollywood. It couldn't be debunked because it was off an iPod. They didn't have technology in 2015, all that CGI and computer stuff. Yeah, AI and all. They didn't have none of that back then to reduplicate what she captured. And then I show Mary the footage, and she's like, "It's right there watching them. Something's watching them." And I'm like, "Hold on, I got to show you where it cloaks, where it turns into a predator." And I show her the video, and I go back, and I'm watching, and she says, "Look, right there. I don't know what that is, but something's right there." And she claims it from what? When you were younger?
The Where's Waldo obsession.
I mean, is that not ironic? So here, a video from 2015 possibly caught 2 creatures in it, right? So we reached out to the owner of it, and we told her, and she hasn't gotten back with us yet. She has her own team that does all the research. Because like, you want somebody else to look at it for you so you don't claim it's something that's not, right? It's somebody else suggesting it possibly could be something. It's not yourself doing it. So, but the more and more we watch it, I was calling people at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, waking people up. I'm like, "Yeah, I'm not gonna believe this." They're like, "What's wrong?" Because I never call anybody. So when I call, they're like, "Oh, damn, it's Grizzly calling. I need to answer it." That's just the way we are, with their family. And they're like, what? And Mike was in Florida, wasn't he? And I was like, "Put your glasses on." He's like, hold on. And I sent it to Mike. And Mike's like, "Grizzly, Mary, there's something there watching them." I'm like, "We don't know what it is." And then, because on YouTube, you can slow it down and frame it. And then it looks like you see eye ridge, brows, a nostril, and I'm like,
The eyes blink.
yeah, and it's like, it's right,
like
and they're
moving
standing not
slow.
even 20 yards from it, from these 2, whatever, black silhouettes or black images are right there at the tree line, and they're discussing what they just witnessed. And so it seemed like what Mary hypothesized is that they said it looked like one was a juvenile, a baby, a young one, and the other one's a little bit older. And when they walked up the path, it looked like what Mary said, one came back up and circled around with one of the adults. And when they start walking, Barb and them, the group, it looked like the adult took the juvenile or infant and pulled it close and just sat there, did not move. And they're standing right in front of it talking. And she's just moving her stick around, talking to everybody. And it's right there. It's like, what is that? And it goes to show is it? It's a possibility, because when they went back, they found the tree branches that came out of the tree, and they found tracks, impressions through the weeds. Because they went back, they put it on the big screen, I think an 85-inch monitor, to replay it and to try to figure out what happened, because it was that quick. Yeah, and we had to play it 3 or 4 times, because if Barb was not looking to her left and saw that sun like break, like when a bird flies over or a buzzard, you get that little shadow real quick. That's exactly what happened when it came out of the tree. And you hear it hit the ground.
Yeah, it comes running out, and then you can see that glimmer.
Yeah.
Which is exactly like what I saw when I looked up and the sun was beaming down. And then you just see like the outline, and it's real clear, shiny. Just all you could see was the outline. It was really strange. And he shows me this video, and I was like, that's exactly like what I saw. It was like, you can't describe it. It's just this shiny image. It's
right,
real
it
hard.
is. And I've seen mushroom hunters be out there talking about morel mushrooms, what type of mushrooms you can eat. And they're like, "What the hell is that?" They're like, "What is that?" And they're out there by themselves with the camera, and he's like, "I just saw something that looked like glitter in the sun," and then they go chase it, and they're like, am I going crazy? And they have no idea what they're seeing, and they cannot understand what that is, because a lot of people has probably not watched or seen anything like that. If you haven't seen Predator, Star Trek, you know, Beam Me Up Scotty, where it goes all that little glimmer and shady, where it sparkles and stuff, just like that. And yeah, it's interesting, because you see people that's not even into Bigfoot or cryptids or the paranormal. And, you know, we hear from the ancient Indians and Native Americans here that they call him the shimmering man, the glimmering man, because, you know, they didn't have knowledge back then, right? And one of the things that I always like to say is use the electric eel theory, right? Back then, when they touched it, it knocked the hell out of them. Well, they didn't know what electricity was, so it was evil, it was bad, right? It was, ooh, ooh, don't touch, you know? And then when science finally figured out what happens with certain animals and creatures, now we know it can produce its own electricity, right? And shock you for a defense mechanism. So as we catch up with technology and science, we're starting to learn more and more about other possibilities. Whether you're flesh and blood or a woo, it's intertwined somehow. We just can't figure it out. There's always more questions. So we was at, we'll say Salt Fork, Ohio. And this is one of the times where I went back and trying to debunk about all this famous activity everybody's encountering, right? It was funny because we put our tents in. When I go camping, I'll be honest with you, I take generators, big screen TVs. I mean, I didn't do it this trip, but so we're in the tent and everybody's sleeping. And Thomas is to my left because I got a 10-man tent, and Curtis is to my right. And it was not even an hour after we laid down, probably around 1:30, 1:45 in the morning. I'm sitting there and I'm watching the tent, and I couldn't sleep. And everybody's snoring. It sounded like an orchestra, you know. And I look, and I'm like, oh, damn it, Curtis. I'm like, Curtis, get off the tent. And it stopped, and I was like, man, he's playing a joke on me again, right? So I look, and it happens again, but this time the side of the tent's impression was like a hand, but it was like not a human hand. It was so huge. And then when it pressed on it, I noticed that the fingers, the digits, were like 4 times longer than the human hand. So what did I do? Try to reach for my American Express and start screaming. And I woke everybody up at camp. And that's when we realized it broke my pop-up tent from pressing on it. It broke one of the posts. It bent it. And it takes a lot of pressure for those pop-up tents to bend a pole. And that was a running joke the whole weekend. And then it was really interesting. A couple had one in the back of the camp scream at it with red eyes. And he got so scared, he ran in the tent and he tried to zip the tent up. And he zipped it up backwards and got stuck. So, yeah, they had the posse out that night. I mean, people with lanterns, torches. I mean, it looked like it was a wild west, like somebody's getting ready to get a lynching. That's how good it was, and the activity. It was just, it screamed. And I don't know, it was trying to intimidate the campers on that one corner of the campground or not. But the only thing I did the whole time was laugh because everybody was in a frantic. And it's like, guys, that's what you're here for, right? The excitement, to have an encounter, or here it is. But it's just, you hear it all the time, right? It's like, did that really happen? Did that really transpire? And then a week later, you hear it from another state or another person that don't believe in these creatures or what they are, or whoever they are. And they're like, wow, that happened to me too. And it seems like it's not as, what do you call it, when something is kind of like scrutinized, you know, you're cuckoo or crazy, that stuff don't exist. Yeah, it's not as taboo as it used to be. A lot more people are open. So, I don't know, you know, that's always the question, is why do it? And it seems like the best way to describe it is humans go to a zoo to see what? Animals, exotic animals, right, that don't live here. And it seems like, from what we gather over the years and talking to people, It's like where there's some type of entertainment to them. And I don't know, I guess the different tents feel different, the texture to it. Because the more and more we interview people and talk to people, it's like they're rubbing the tent to feel the texture onto it and see what it feels like. And there's some type of intelligence, and we always talk about this because how it thinks and moves, and like when it feels something, right, and touches, it's like trying to learn, why is this here, or what is it made out of? But I don't have a good answer why they come around. To see something, not a human hand, being pressed against the tent. And like I said, some of the guys we know are jokesters, but there's a fine line where we know we don't cross. But when I saw how big the hand was, and then when it pressed on it, and you saw the digits, the fingers, how long they, I lost it. I was trying to reach for something underneath a tent or my cot or my air mattress or something, because I didn't know if I was going to get eaten alive. I know that sounds silly, but everybody says, well, we pick berries with them, and it's like, yeah, okay. Well, you can pick your berries. I'm going to get the one that's on PMS or something and don't like humans, right? That's what I'm saying. Humans are different. That stuff, yeah, I get a little nervous to it. Especially when they come through your camp and they go through the bed of your truck or your coolers and stuff. Yeah, that's fascinating. Because, how would you open a cooler, right? So, yeah, bears, they destroy them and so forth. But I don't know. It's like it's a mystery that keeps giving, right? It's never ending. And you hear that a lot. Like down in the Appalachian mountains and trails, you'll hear these creatures wearing human clothes. They take off clotheslines. They don't fit them. It's not like they're wearing skinny jeans or anything like that. But, what people wear out in the country, ripped shirts, flannel shirts and hats and stuff like that. It's like they want to fit in. And we get a lot of reports of that. Well, and I say this a lot on our channel on Bigfoot Outlaw, is that we know little Johnny is out in the woods in a monkey suit, drunker in hell, causing havoc. We know that happens, right? We know people that hoax a lot of evidence and creates their own evidence, but like we always say, you lie, cheat, or steal, it's always going to come out, right? And the truth will always be set free. And it's sad that you have these people out here, because that, to me, is what muddies the waters even more for the people that's never experienced anything or probably don't believe. It's like, there you go, some other jerk getting caught, fabricating Sasquatch evidence or Bigfoot evidence, right? So there's your answer, what's going on in the woods. But, is when you talk to people that don't know each other, that don't communicate or not in these Facebook or on social medias, they're like, hey, this happened to me last year or when I was a kid. It seems like every time I hear somebody put the topper on the cake, and I was like, man, this is the craziest thing I ever heard. Then you hear another encounter. It's even crazier than that, and it's so far-fetched. And then you hear other people start telling the same story that's similar, right? And you're like, whoa, maybe there is something to this. And it makes you wonder, because, there's a lot of things we are not able to explain that goes on out here in the forest. We just don't know. So a lot of people will say, just like what we talked about last night, when you see something like that in the woods or out in the field, yeah, there are lightning bugs this time of year. But one of the things that we noticed last night on the ones that you all was observing, it was much brighter and bigger than any lightning bug, right? And lightning bugs will blink, right, every so many seconds. This was like bright and it fades out. And so, yeah, there's a clear distinction between what you were witnessing last night compared to the lightning bug phenomenon.
Yeah, it wasn't that green pin color. It was
right.
More, it was bigger. It was like this whitish blue color.
Right.
And it'd stay lit longer.
Right.
And appear in another spot. It was weird. But we did see lightning bugs.
Yes, we did.
The lights we observed, they looked different.
Yes, very different, and that's one pointed that out.
No, but that light, it was weird, because we'd see it and it would disappear, and then we'd see it again and disappear.
Right.
We're watching all the way down the ridge line. So it was pretty crazy.
And that's where Mike says there's watchers and stuff in that area.
But over by where we were staying at, not too far from where Curtis's cot was, not last night, but the night before, we saw like flashes in there. It almost looked like a camera flash that lit up and then went away. And he saw it, and I saw one of those, but we couldn't catch it on camera.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy.
Like
that
somebody's using a flash camera.
That's
Right.
exactly
And
what
it's
it looked like.
ground level. It's not like it's up in the sky.
Right,
Trees,
no.
Maybe there's distant lightning.
Right. No, absolutely. Yeah, there's a difference in, like you said, about lighting. Well, you're a photographer and filmer. So we look at shades and lights and washouts and everything like that. But like you said, it was coming from the ground area, not from the sky or from the trees. It was more ground located because the way it illuminated the area, the ground, it was fascinating. But like I said, you just can't explain any of this stuff, right? We just try to learn from each other, share encounters and experiences, and try to put something together and figure this stuff out.
Absolutely. What are your guys' plans in the future with Bigfoot research, the Outlaw podcast?
So we're not here to prove the existence of whatever this creature or force people, that some people want to call it, that exists. People's done that over the years, right? Yeah, there's a lot of evidence that is fabricated, but you never know what's going to happen when you're out in the woods, right? To us, it's more connecting with nature and God and relaxing from the troubled lives, but it's also like a job though too, isn't it? Because you want to learn more, and you meet more people and other people that do podcasts too, and other Bigfoot experiencers or hunters or investigators, what you want to call them. And it's like, wow, you trade stories and encounters. And I learned something from you because I had that similar experience too, but you don't know what it is to cooperate with everybody.
That's right.
Absolutely. Okay, I appreciate you guys. You can see this on camera, but it looks like there was a big rock there. Do you think someone's tire got stuck there? Yeah, that's probably what it was.
Well, the thing though is, wouldn't there be another one next to it?
Yeah, there's not another impression where both...
It is weird that a big rock's missing.
Yeah. You can't really tell on camera, but it looks like there's a huge rock.
Strange.
Yeah.
See, stuff like that makes you wonder what you can see. Hoof marks or something there.
Yeah, it looks like a foot.
I know it, doesn't it?
Yeah. Something came down through here. Maybe some arches over there. This looks snaky as hell.
Thank you.
Oh wow, that does look like arches.
You got it? Go ahead, hon. I can get it.
It's like copperhead territory.
I know, right?
Well, there are some possible arches back here, and that big tree is kind of where you... Yeah, you saw it over there by that big tree. Or was it over
I
here?
don't know if it was up here or right back here.
Okay, so straight back this way.
Yeah, it's in this area. It was weird. And it could have been a leaf on a spider web. A big leaf.
I'm not seeing that though. It should still be hanging on the spider web.
I know, I don't see any indentions or anything, so let's go back to that tree.
Yeah. See where I saw it,
Like
somewhere over here.
The only other thing I know is there was a bird up in the shadows sometimes. I don't know if we saw that.
Okay.
Moving so far, that's what was weird. It was back and forth, left and right.
That's why I kept watching to see.
Yeah. Or maybe what I saw was not what you saw. Maybe I was looking at something different. Because you were facing that way, so you saw without a doubt what it was.
Maybe it was back here.
Yeah. Because it was straight back from the chairs, right?
Yeah.
Okay. This would be it.
That's why I'm trying to gauge it. Yeah.
Behind this huge tree.
It looks like there's some disturbance up there, but I
I
don't
know.
know what that is.
I noticed that, yeah. What's that?
Can you take a picture over there?
Yeah.
See if you see anything.
Well, if we didn't come check it out, I'd be wondering about it.
Do you see anything?
This thing only zooms in so far.
Oh,
It
does it?
looks weird back there, though.
I know, that's why I was asking you to take a picture. It's almost like there's like a fog or something.
Yeah, it does look like a fog. Okay.
See, like, look at that. Where do you see that?
I know.
Snap that picture. That's weird.
Yeah, I'm recording.
Okay.
There's a branch broken too on that tree.
Uh-huh.
I mean, this would be the spot where they would be at.
I know, right?
I gotta look just a little further. Almost looks like there's a trail back there or something. Like a game trail.
Ground so hard too, you know.
Yeah.
That's really weird, isn't it?
Yeah.
See that branch there? Where did it come from?
Like all these broken around here, it's just very odd for them to be laid in place
Like stacked up together.
you know it?
Well, we see this phenomenon
In Tennessee.
in the Mammoth Cave area.
Okay. That one's just sticking straight up. Or is that a tree? Limb or a tree? No, it's just sitting there. Yeah, like all these are stacked up. Maybe, oh wow. That kind of looks like a track there. I can't really tell. You see that?
Oh yeah, sure can.
This is where I'd be hanging out at today. It just feels cool in here.
Pretty cool little area. You know it? Oh, sorry.
Hoping to see something maybe, but
Of course, they come up behind the camera guy.
what was that?
I don't know, I heard it. Something flying through the trees. I thought something was falling, but it sounded like it went across. The bugs weren't going until we walked back here, so there had to been something. But they came through that thick stuff, maybe. It's really thick back there.